Now, as Russia, of course, expands its offensive in Ukraine, striking cities in the west and the center of the country, we are now getting satellite images taken of an area where there has been extensive damage to homes and buildings in the town of Moshchun, that's northeast of the capital, Kyiv. Now, the war, of course, has entered day 17, and authorities have reported dire humanitarian situations in the besieged southern port city of Mariupol, even as what we are learning is that Russia is now expanding its offensive, striking cities in the west and the center of the country as well right now. The focus of the bombardment from the Russian side continues to be Mariupol and Kharkiv. Now, the Russian military has claimed to have uncovered 30 biological laboratories in Ukraine. And while the United States has denied Russian claims of Washington operating biowarfare laboratories, calling the allegations preposterous, a massive face-off has now erupted over the biowarfare charge.
The United Nations Security Council met on Friday to talk about Russia's claims that the US and Ukraine were developing biological weapons.
We convened the meeting today because, as Russia is conducting a special military operation in Ukraine, we discovered a truly shocking fact of emergency cleanup by the Kyiv regime of the traces of a military biological program which is being implemented by Kyiv with support by the United States Ministry of Defense. Our Ministry of Defense, Russian Ministry of Defense, now has documents which confirms that on the territory of Ukraine there was a network consisting of at least 30 biological laboratories in which very dangerous biological experiments are being conducted, aimed at strengthening the pathogenic qualities of the plague, anthrax, TULAREMIA, cholera, and other lethal diseases using synthetic biology. This work is being done and funded and supervised by the Defense Threat Reduction Agency of the United States.
Russia called on the UN to think about the dangers of biowarfare.
I would like to address my colleagues from Europe separately. Right next to the European Union, you've had an experimental platform for extremely dangerous biological trials. And we call upon you to think about a very real biological danger to the people in European countries, which can result from an uncontrolled spread of bioagents from Ukraine, which, as we have seen with COVID-19, is impossible to stop. And if there is such a scenario, then all Europe will be covered by it.
Russian envoy to the UNSC accused the US of being hands in glove with Ukraine and said they were prepared to pass the buck to Russia in case of an expose.
We also know that in the case of any such incident, Pentagon told their Ukrainian colleagues to immediately accuse the armed forces of the Russian Federation of this, say that they are striking against scientific and medical institutions, and or link these incidents with the Russian diversionary groups.
However, the United States accused Russia of using the UNSC as a forum to spread misinformation about its war against Ukraine, saying the US had an inkling about such a propaganda by Russia.
Russia asked the Security Council for today's meeting for the sole purpose of lying and spreading disinformation, and that is exactly what you have heard from the Russian PR this morning. You also heard from Ms. Nakamitsu that the UN is not aware of any biological or chemical weapons programs in Ukraine. Last month, Secretary Blinken laid out with tragic accuracy what Russia was about to do. He specifically warned that Russia would manufacture a pretext for attack, and even cautioned that Russia would fabricate allegations about chemical or biological weapons to justify its own violent attacks against the Ukrainian people. Today, the world is watching Russia do exactly what we warned it would. Russia is attempting to use the Security Council to legitimize disinformation and deceive people to justify President Putin's war of choice against the Ukrainian people. And China, too, has been spreading disinformation in support of Russia's outrageous claims. I will say this once. Ukraine does not have a biological weapons program. There are no Ukrainian biological weapons laboratories supported by the United States, not near Russia's border or anywhere.
Thomas Greenfield even speculated that Russia claims could be a pretext for Putin to use those weapons against the Ukrainian people.